Hey everybody out there, it's the Raw Traveler again, coming at you from Tucson, Arizona this time. So, I decided to do another video, and the topic of today's video is about getting bumped on flights. Now, I haven't done this in a while, but it's happened to me many times in my travels in the past. And if you do this consciously, it's possible to get a very high probability of getting bumped off of flights. See, because most of the airlines, probably maybe even all of them, I can't say for sure, but the major ones for sure, they overbook their flights. Overbooking means if they have 100 seats on the plane, they will book sometimes 10% or even higher, 15% more. So they'll book 110 people on that flight, or they'll book 115 people on that flight. And usually there's a bunch of people that don't show up. There'll be people that, they'll book 110 seats, and sometimes only 75 or 80 or even 90, maybe 95 people will show up for the flight, and the rest of the seats, the rest of those people are going to just be no-shows, whether they come for another flight later on, or they just don't show up for the flight ever. It doesn't really matter. The airlines overbooks most of their flights. And what happens is occasionally everybody or almost everybody shows up for the flight, and there'll be more than 100 people who show up for the flight, and they all have a valid ticket. So now the airlines is sort of in trouble because they only can allow 100 people on that plane. They can't have standing room on an airplane. That's absolutely illegal to have someone standing on an airplane. So they have to do something about that. And the government sort of forces the airlines that if somebody gets bumped, in other words, if you're that 101st person or higher that doesn't get a seat, they have to compensate you some way. So usually usually what they do is they ask for volunteers. They'll say, oh, this flight is extremely oversold, and we need volunteers, people who have flexible plans and who can take a later flight to go to the same destination. So in other words, if you're flying from, let's just say, New York to LA, and the flight has 100 seats, and you're number 101 or 102 or something, and they decide that you're not going to get on that plane, and they bump you, they have to make sure that they get you to your destination. So they have to get you to LA, but they won't necessarily be able to get you there at the same time the original flight was going to get you there. So they might put you on a different flight of the same airlines, which is most of the time that's what they'll do. They'll put you on a flight that's later that same day on the same airlines to that same destination. Occasionally, they might not have that many flights. If it's an airline that doesn't have that many flights to that destination, they might put you on a competing airlines to that same destination. That's happened too. And at the same time, they're generally going to give you some kind of a voucher, a coupon that's going to be worth anywhere from like a few dollars, like $50, $75 if it's a very short flight, and it could be worth $100, it could be worth $200, $300. It depends on where the flight was going, how long the flight was, and it also depends on the airlines, and it depends on whether you volunteered to give up your seat, and how long and how many people volunteered. So it's kind of random, but from my recollection, the times it's happened to me, the average was about $200 to $300. So this is just a one way. They would give you usually $200 to $300 voucher, which you could use for 1 year, and it's only good on that airline. So if it's American Airlines, it's going to be only good on American Airlines, or Delta, it's going to only be good on Delta. And that it's like cash. It's not It's not like frequent flyer miles, where when you fly on a frequent flyer mile paid flight, you don't receive miles. But this is like cash, so you can actually book a regular flight directly through the airlines and pay for it with that voucher, and anything up over that amount, like if you got a $200 voucher and you're booking a $300 flight, the $100 you'd have to pay in a different way, like with a credit card or cash or whatever. But if it's under that amount, like if it's you have a $300 voucher and your flight is only $250, the voucher will still retain the $50, and yet you can use that again later on, as long as it's within the terms of the voucher, like 1 year. So that's a pretty neat way to get free flight, free travel. The way, if you're like a student and you have a lot of time, or you're not you don't have a 9 to 5 type of job, and you do have a lot of time and flexibility, there's ways that you can make your probability of getting one of these bumped vouchers higher. For example, here in the United States, if you travel in the summertime, meaning like May or after Memorial Day, towards the end of May through June, July, and most of August before Labor Day, that's the busiest time for the airlines. That's when you're most likely going to get bumped. That's when the flights are booked really full. So if you're able to fly on those months and go on a very popular route, like going to a place like LA, or going to a place like San Francisco, going to a place like Las Vegas, going to a place like New York City, or going to Atlanta, or going to any of the major airports in the country where there's a lot of people, a lot of demand, a lot of people want to go there, major cities, and if you book it for example, a very popular time, lots of people work, and at 5 p.m. or 4:35 p.m. they get off work, they want to get to the airport maybe an hour after that, so 6. So a flight like at 7 p.m., 6:30, 7 p.m., maybe even in the 5-ish, 6, 7, 8 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening, out of a really busy airport. If you can book that ahead of time to a city that's pretty popular, one of the ones I mentioned, or any major airport in the United States, there's a good chance that that flight's going to be overbooked, and a lot of people are going to actually show up for the flight. And my recommendation is you sit as close as you can to the podium. There's a podium in almost every airport, every gate. There's a podium where the airline employees will work. They'll stand behind the podium. They usually have a microphone. People will line up in front of the podium to get their boarding pass or get upgrades or whatever they need. If you could sit as close as you can, get there early, sit as close as you can to the podium, and then if it's a Friday afternoon flight and it's to a very popular city, and you're pretty confident that this flight's going to be oversold and possibly a lot of people show up for the flight, they might announce that this flight has been oversold, and then are there any volunteers? And as soon as you hear that, get up off your seat and get to the podium, because it's first come, first serve. The first people to get there are the most likely to get the voucher. So be right there, be right near the podium. As soon as they announce that there's a flight oversold and they need volunteers, get up off your seat, move your butt to the podium, and then hand your boarding pass or whatever. Just talk to the agent there and say, yes, I'm willing to give up my seat to fly on a later flight, provided you really could do that. And then you give up your seat, and they'll give you a voucher. Usually it's, like I said, $200 to $300, and they'll still get you to whatever destination you're going to. And you're going to get there a bit later. You most likely get there the same day. If it's a situation where it's quite late in the afternoon, quite late in the evening, and they can't get you there that same day, they'll give you another perk, which is usually a room in a hotel. So you get a free room in a hotel, and they'll probably send you on the first flight in the morning, the next morning. So that's happened to me too. I've been bumped once or twice, and I've got a room in a hotel, and they gave me the room for free, and they even often they give you even a voucher for food. You get like a couple of vouchers. If it's an evening, you probably get a dinner voucher, and you get a breakfast voucher from the airlines, which is usually good in the airport. So you get free food in the airport, you get a free room, and you'll get a free flight the next morning. Plus you get that $200 voucher, $200 to $300 voucher that you can use within a year for that airlines. So that and other days that are popular, Friday afternoons and Sunday afternoons, a lot of people, same thing, same reason. The Friday ones are popular is people work and they have to get back to work for Monday, so they want to fly on Sunday. So if you pick some of them, also especially if it's a long weekend, if there's a holiday that particular weekend, through the Christmas holidays, the New Year's holidays, things like that, it's a holiday weekend and you're able to get a flight, a reasonably inexpensive flight, leaving just before the holiday weekend, coming back at the end of the holiday weekend, there's a good chance that flights can be oversold, and they're going to be bumping people or asking people to volunteer their seat. And if you're sitting right near the podium when they say that, and you get up and you rush, you just rush to the agent and say, yeah, I want to give up I'll be willing to give up my seat for a voucher. You get there first. You're first come, first serve. You're going to get the voucher. You'll get whatever other perks they're offering, which is usually another flight to the same destination. Sometimes you get a room, sometimes you get food. So that's a neat little way to get from free flights, free flying from the airlines. You don't even have to have a credit card. You don't have to have any kind of frequent flyer miles, but also when you use the voucher, you can still earn your frequent flyer miles. So there's another little tip from the Raw Traveler, and we'll hope to see you on board really soon.